Sebastian Beaumont. Welcome to the Cellar Studio. I do spend a lot of time at your beautiful farm, so it's completely outrageous that it's taken so long to get you here. And I know you're flying straight to the UK after this podcast, so thanks so much for being here. What are you doing in the UK, out of interest?
Holiday. Yeah.
Really? So you're not...
like surfing, beach vibe. It's 30 degrees. Bevan Johnson and I are hanging out. We're going to go and visit the wine society.
You're going to go and flog some wine.
We're going to flog some wine. No,
Please,
we're getting a tour of the wine society premises.
Oh, wow.
We're going up to York and do a tasting there, and then down.
So is the wines? Is that like that's an old wine club?
Super old wine club. One of the oldest, I think, in the world in terms of traditional wine clubs, and have an incredible collection of all the classics, and then people store their wine there. It's a bit like wine cellar, but like
on steroids,
50 times.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, enjoy.
Very cool. Yeah.
Good luck. So we are in an exciting phase at the moment, launching our storytelling course, and I think what we love about the course is a lot of wine is very focused on product, rightly so. Yeah. I mean, if you do all of your winemaking studies and even studying like WSET and things like that, you get quite technical, get very focused on product. But what this course is about is sort of flipping it around and talking a little bit more about the themes, the people, the place, which actually lead to the product. That's a natural outcome is what's in the glass. So yeah, this is just an exploration, a deep dive.
A chit-chat.
Chit-chat, yeah. And we so love your contents as well. So we'll definitely put a link up to that because I think the way you talk about wine is so approachable and fun. But where did it all start for you? I mean, you live and farm one of the oldest farms in the region.
Yeah.
But it's a bit more recent than that. Were you born as your folks bought the farm, or maybe 9 months later?
I was conceived a little bit ahead of their wedlock.
Oh, wow.
Apparently. My parents were a pretty alternative couple who'd my mother grown up in Cape Town, Joburg, and my father here in Elgin, actually just down the road.
I didn't realize.
Beaulieu was their first farm.
Is that so?
Yeah, so they were just over here and then moved to Valley Green. And then my father couldn't work with his brother on one small farm, which we've all realized is a pretty tough thing to do. So, he was interested in farming, and I think my mother was interested in helping him farm, with no formal training in either of them. My mother studied fine art, and my father studied life.
Was she at the Michaelis School of Art?
Yes, that kind of hanging out and coming into farming world. I think it's quite good because you come with a fresh perspective.
Totally.
And they were English-speaking people who found a farm in Botrivier, a completely Afrikaans.
Botrivier, I think.
Or the Botriviera, as we now like to call it, because it's gone up. It's gone up so much. And Botrivier, I think it was the opportunity. And I look back and I look at it and I say, well, it was very similar to when Adi found Kalmoesfontein in the Swartland. Similar type of farm, an old winery, old buildings, pretty dilapidated, a few vineyards still in the ground, but nothing really substantial. And then, just people with a lot of energy and relatively, at that time, cost-effective start to the farm business. My grandfather helped them out with cash and capital and machinery and stuff like that to get going, and they planted vineyards, and that was the main thing. And the cellar sat with old labels and old barrels and old equipment in it, and completely dormant.
So was there any bottled wine that you could?
No,
nothing
left. It had basically, I think when my parents found it, there was like a tin shed behind the old house, which dates back to like 1730.
Wow.
There was this tin shed full with brandy bottles. And basically there was a shebeen operating out of off the farm, and and there was nothing going on. So they really had a kind of a fresh palette to start on, and then, but with not a lot of money to do it. So they had to work hard at just building it up and getting the vineyards going. So that was the main focus, and supplying the grapes to Villiersdorp Co-op at that time. So
wow. So the business was to plant vineyard, and sell grapes. It's
grapes,
tough, eh?
which is
Yeah.
was really tough at that time because the industry was still very much locked down, and selling grapes was like, I think they were getting 1,500 rand a ton for a good ton of grapes, and then you didn't always get that. And I think my father was a good farmer, and used a lot of people to give him advice, and helped along the way. And there was still a structure that helped, and of consultants from KWV who would come out and give you tips on what to plant.
Yeah,
but they planted all kinds of stuff, like mostly white, so Chenin, Claret Blanche, Colombar, a little bit of Harslevelou and Sauvignon, and then Chardonnay, and so it was a real mixed bowl of those, and then only 2 reds, which are Pinotage and Tinta Barocca. And the funny thing with Tinta Barocca is that the co-op told them to plant, but every time they brought the truck with the Tinta Barocca grapes on it, and Tinta Barocca has these long bunches, the co-op guys would start to curse because when they tipped the whole truck into the crusher, it would block the whole system because these bunches would get tangled up in that system.
It's so tough.
So it was like, why do you tell me to plant it when you don't want me to deliver it, kind of thing, So it was funny things like that.
And the heritage of the farm is, I mean, it feels like you've got a lot of people in your ear, I'm sure, as the current generation, because it's been farmed for hundreds of years.
Yeah, so it was set up by the Dutch East India Company in 1730. And I think you imagine it, I always try and visualize what it was like at that time to set up a farm, like you got to come out of Salaris Pass over the mountains, probably in a wagon track, and go through the Palmmeet, through Elgin, through Grabo, down through Houhoek, which was Houhoek, is Houhoek, like hauled around the corner, which was apparently like a more treacherous pass than the Salaris Pass. It was a long way down, and you had to haul. And then you get to the bottom, and you must be absolutely finished, So you needed a place to rest and replenish your supplies. So that was the idea of the farm, is that it was set up to basically be a supply farm for people coming out.
Brilliant. And I mean, it is, you've kind of continued that legacy. I mean, that's, if I've had a tiring drive down the pass, I can get a flat white and great Cortado with almond milk. But it's fascinating because I just love the authenticity of the property. I do laugh because it's quite in vogue at the moment in Franschhoek to build or restore like a water mill, and have like this water mill going. And I know like Andy Self is such a legend in the valley. He's done so much work on your mill. But what I truly love about your old water mill is that it works and it also mills. I mean, there's one that I went to recently which I kind of got a bit upset because I was like, oh, this thing's it's turning, it's moving, it's brilliant, having my Cortado and Franschhoek, but it's not doing anything. It's not even connected to any gears. So I mean, that process, it must have taken some vision and some artistic flair to actually even think about bringing these relics back to life.
No, it was I think partly Andy's like tenacity to want to restore things.
Okay, so he was knocking on the door.
He was knocking on the door after servicing our tractors, then he would go and have a look at the mill, and then he would like say, okay, can we fix the mill? And then I think one thing that my parents did do is they knew the historical value of the farm, and they wanted to preserve it. So although they didn't have the engineering skills to fix something like the mill, my father and my mother basically sealed off that space so that at some stage somebody could come and do it. So, and Andy just happened to arrive and do it. And I mean, I still get goosebumps when we go down and we start it up in the morning, and you realize it's got no buttons, no electricity connected, and it's this beautiful white flour comes pouring out of it.
It's incredible. And how old is that mill, hey, Sebastian?
We reckon like 250 years at least. It was a much smaller building, and you can still see the facade of it, like the original one. So the wheel was smaller, everything was smaller, and it catered for the demand at that time. And then obviously as the demand increased, they increased the milling capacity. And so that's where the building got bigger and needed more equipment to produce more flour.
Yeah.
And there were people up until the late 60s who lived in Botriver or up the valley who would bring by cart their grain to be milled.
Yeah.
So it was running up until then, and then obviously all the big commercial mills killed it. So, or killed that kind of style of milling.
Yeah, it's funny how these things come in and out of vogue as well. I mean, I'm in my obviously midlife crisis mode, so I'm baking sourdough, and I've used some of your flour, and it's absolutely incredible because it's not over processed. So it's
and there's a massive amount of information and actual stuff worth looking at.
That's for another podcast. and then Sebastian, with your family, I often think of wine as like it attracts like scientific minded people, and then also like the artists so your mum, coming from an artistic background, I believe she was the first one to sort of say like, let's actually make our own wine. It was like a barrel Pinotage, right?
Barrel of Pinotage in 1993. She'd made stuff beforehand, and we got some pictures of her and my grandparents, her parents, sitting outside the cellar crushing some grapes with myself or my sister or my brother.
I think I've seen
that. And those were the kind of like real experimental portions. And then 93 came along, and she said, "Oh, can we make some? Let's try and make some wine before we pull these old vineyards out and start replanting. Let's see whether we can add value, and how much would it take to fix the cellar up." And then so she actually had Peter Finnison come in and do a full assessment of the winery. And he wrote a report, and he said, "This is what needs to be done." And then at the end of it, he still said, "But the one thing is, don't go into the wine business." So that was in 93, which was crazy. But I think the reason probably for it was that, we don't come from marketing backgrounds. We don't come from big business backgrounds. We come from artistic and farming background. And how do you make a wine business work with that kind of background? Because as we know, a lot of the successful brands are built around a marketing strategy and plan, and that wasn't high on our priority list.
No, but it's been more organic than that, and I think the word family is the word that I often think about when it comes to you guys. And just I mean, I remember being quite young and going to one of your open days with your folks, and
free lunch.
The lunch, and like sneaking a glass of something delicious with your old man sitting on the stoep. And so then your journey with wine, because that's also the tricky thing. We're sitting on a little family farm here, and I said to my dad, "I will never." Not in that tone, but I don't think I'm going to get into wine. I'm going to go and do something else. And I eventually found my way back because of the influence of this, of growing up on a farm. How did your journey sort of begin? And like, what was your...
Very, very similar. Like, no interest in
thanks, but no
living
thanks.
On the farm or being... I think the only thing I fundamentally knew, because I look at my kids now and I go... So which one of them is potentially interested in the future, And then I say, well, it's Sophie, because she's actually tasting wine, and yes, she's the oldest, and therefore at that stage where I can see it, and there's a natural kind of instinct to make food, and she loves it, and she loves tasting the wines. Every new vintage I have, I give her a taste, and she gives feedback and stuff like that. So you can see there's a natural kind of connection. Not to say that the other two are not at this stage, but they're not at the same stage in life. And I think it was similar for me. I loved the farming side. I loved being on the farm in my June-July holidays when everybody went off camping. I was, that 15, 16-year-old phase where you don't want to see anybody. And I think I was a pretty grumpy kind of kid. But I loved being on the farm, and I loved, just working with the guys and pruning, and I never really thought much about it. It was just natural instinct. And I always thought of, I dreamt of going into marine biology, which, I think is one of those things that you dream about, but the reality is quite different from a
After
practical.
particularly good surf, you're like, I've got to get into this.
I've got to stay in this world. I do love surfing, and I did know that I loved being near the coast, so therefore, those kind of things. But I never really understood the potential of what was there, and I didn't consciously go into it thinking about that, really. I then, I traveled and I came back and I decided to study winemaking. I knew by then, because that first vintage I'd had the experience. So I'd literally finished school, and I'd finished school in 92 and went that harvest of 93. I went and helped my mum and Arthur Pullman make this barrel of Pinotage on his farm up Goedvertrouw.
Yeah.
And and I still have the notes from that. And I was like, that really pinged something in my brain, that wine is a whole different dimension of science, art, creativity, and using the farm to do it, So it kind of opened up a whole new channel for me to look at. And it's not just coming back to the farm and farming with my father and having to work with him for, that was kind of like strong personalities and doesn't work so easily,
Yeah.
So I think that's where it gave me the avenue to express myself, and I had to obviously work at it and study, and then I had that advantage over my parents, I guess, if I look at it, that I had studied winemaking, and so they recognized that I had some deeper training in a way, and then obviously I had Niels as a kind of a mentor.
Yeah, so Niels Verburg was your winemaker.
Yeah,
that's
so
cool.
I learned a lot from him. I spent a lot of time working in the vineyards in the early days with my father, and learned a lot about the instinct of farming, not the science of farming or the technical agricultural side, but like what you must do by when. My father had this deep kind of knowledge of 30 years of farming, and you can't, somehow you can't write that down, it's just like, you need to do this by now. And I was like, surely you've got another 3 weeks. I was like, no, you don't.
That's what a cool, like natural way to get into it, because, you had the expertise from a winemaker, you had the degree, so you could like wave that around.
Yeah.
And then your dad had that, innate, farming knowledge, which for anyone that lives in the city, or the first thing for me that happened when I moved back to the farm is you really, really start to paying attention to the weather.
Yeah.
We'll get onto that for you as well. But one of the things I love is you often talked about like pruning your vineyard and like how that's like a conversation.
Yeah. It's the first thing I looked at when I drove into your farm this morning. I was like, are those shoots trained? And what's the average length of your shoots on your vines?
We'll have a little
you're putting some down and you're putting some up.
Yeah, we've got some smart Dyson going in the Syrah. But I love that. And I love that farming side of things is also like my first sort of passion in the whole wine industry. What do you mean by that? Like having a conversation with your vines through sort of pruning?
Yeah, I think it's the most, like, you can pay a lot of money to go to a therapist and get like psychological support for whatever you're dealing with. But you can also just walk into your vineyard and prune for an hour and kind of be immersed in it. Your hands hurt at the end of it. You got some lekker blisters if you haven't been pruning for a while. And you learn to read each vine and interpret it, and we've got some fantastic old vineyards and young vines, and you got different cultivars, and each one's different, and you walk through, and then sometimes you realize, oh shit, you've been doing something wrong all the way back, and you go back and you got to start again and fix it. But it's super focused, and I just love the natural hands-on part of that. I love doing things with my hands. And I do appreciate the science and the chemistry and all the technical, I like that side of it, but I'm not, I prefer to try and drive it from a practical side of the farming, and then try and capture that in the wines.
Yeah.
Like how do we express Beaumont in the bottle?
Yeah, and it's also interesting how, I'm sure it was because you've got seriously old vines on your farm, but how some of the pruning methods have also changed, and evolved, how it's like a conversation also with the previous generations. Like, guys, we were pruning quite aggressively back in the day, and now it's going back to maybe some of the older traditions. It's not just trying to get maximum yield to send to the co-op. It's trying to get longevity.
I think for our size businesses, the smaller, more niche, you have to prune for the long term, and you have to farm for the long term. It's not superficial. That's not just a what do you call it? A tag phrase or It's a proper thing that you actually have to
Yes.
really apply. And I mean, we've gone through using a compressor with pneumatics pruning shears, which would, lop off your fingers.
That's terrifying. Yeah.
And that's like actually back to like traditional pruning shears that hurt your hands, but you get a better cut and a cleaner cut, and the detail in how you prune is much better. So yeah, I love it. And that led on to me like walking to school. As a kid, I walked to school past the one vineyard that goes into Hope Marguerite, and I throw rocks at the vines or whatever. My sister and I, we walk to the Laerskool Compacta and past this vineyard that I'm still now making wine from. Like to try and relate, like, what did I think at that time? I literally threw rocks at the vineyard. I think rode my back pedal brake bike down the road. And but never dreamt of making wine from it, or that might be a possibility. And there I am, making wine from a 52-year-old vineyard.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
So that's what we have in the glass here, huh?
That's what part of it, yeah. Okay. Hope is obviously a blend of two vineyards. But yeah, Hope Marguerite is our... we were actually talking about it yesterday with JP and them, like, is it our flagship? Is it what do you call it? Is it a... signature wine, or and I was like, I hate those terms, because at the end of the day, each wine that we put out there is representing our brand, our name, our reputation, and if one of them's not great, then it affects it just as much as another. And so, to me, like every wine that I make is in its own style and expression is really important, and then and not really a flagship in that way.
Well, I think this is definitely part of your heritage. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And why is it called Hope Marguerite?
So my grandmother's, my father's mum, she was living down the road here, and a passionate gardener, farmer, actually quite super interested in wine as well. She did one of the first Cape Wine Academy courses with Phyllis Hands, way back. And they went to Chile and to Burgundy on trips. Yeah. And my grandfather was fishing. If he wasn't farming, he was fishing. So she was basically left on her own. And so she just said stuff that I'm going to go and do things I want to do. And she learned about wine. And and I thought, I don't know, 96 was the first vintage of this. It wasn't an official Hope Marguerite vintage, but it was Hope Marguerite in the making. It was a barrel fermented Chenin. And 97 was the actual first labeled Hope Marguerite.
So good, eh?
And it's been a long journey. And at that time, Hope, putting Chenin into barrel was ridiculous.
Really?
Everybody, there were two others. I think John Daniel was making one, and there was somebody from KWV putting a bit of Chenin into barrel. But it wasn't done, because Chardonnay went into barrel, and maybe a little bit of Sauvignon, but definitely not Chenin. And so it was the start of of that Chenin journey with both styles that we make, the unwooded and this Hope Marguerite. And then we just thought, give it a name as to differentiate it from, we actually had Chenin Blanc Barrel Reserve on the first one. And I was like, I can't stand the reserve name. It's like, what is that? Like, is everything else worse, or how does it work?
This is stuff you drink. The rest is for you. Yeah.
You go to that wedding, and they got the special bottles for the bride and groom, and the rest have to drink. That's
guilty.
Really?
No, we had
not slapped you
the same wine. Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
No, but it's So Hope, I think, because of her interest in the wine business and in the way that she also inspired my parents to restore things and to do things, it was kind of a tribute to her, with no real concept, it was just to make a barrel fermented Chenin from our old vines.
Love it.
And those first vintages were from a vineyard that was planted before we bought the farm. And then it subsequently moved into the vineyards that were planted by Raal in 74 and 78. So that's where it's kind of evolved into.
And your, the Old Vine project has become massive. It's become a buzzword effectively, and I don't know if everyone understands exactly what it means.
Yeah.
Like what do old vines give in the wine in the glass compared to maybe
Which answer do you want?
no,
You want my real one or
the real
or the
McCoy.
marketing story?
No.
No, I think the whole concept of I think let's go back to how this kind of concept starts in South Africa. I think you have to realize that South Africa is one of the uniquest countries in terms of vineyard records. It has actual vineyard records that were like legally binding. You had to put down and send in your submission of your plantings in the year that you planted, and you had to tell them what rootstock and what cultivar and et cetera, et cetera. So it's actually the only country that I think can legitimately say this is the age of the vineyard.
Oh, wow.
Whereas a lot of the other countries, it's the winemaker or the viticulturist or the farmer who says, I think I planted those in 1820.
Classic field blend, like who knows?
We might find the document somewhere. But yeah, it can be mixed. So in South Africa, we have this record. And I think it was a kind of vision, I don't know whether it was definitely Russo who started that, but the vision came around, like, I guess, how can you preserve very special vineyard sites
and incentivize
the producer to keep them in the ground. So it is I see it mostly as an incentive for grape growers who have special vineyards on their farms, but they can't achieve the prices that they should be to actually keep them viably farmed. So, it's all fine if you grow your own grapes and you can add them to a Hope Marguerite, which you sell for $480 a bottle.
Yeah.
And so justify keeping the vineyards. Whereas if you're just a grape grower and you've got to negotiate every year that price, the guy will turn around and say, no, sorry, that's just ridiculous. I'm not going to pay you 15,000 Rand a ton, or I'm going to pay 2,000 Rand a ton. And then it's not viable. So I think the concept of old vine vineyards is a fantastic one. And I think as long as we are true to it and really true to any of these kind of things and not just use it for marketing gain, the wines that do come out should make really fascinating wines. And the way I see it as a viticulturist, the vineyards are quite different from my young vines.
Okay.
They're less vigorous, they're old and gnarly, they look amazing, but they also have skins that are thicker. The berries are more variable in size in the bunches. You got kind of a bigger canopy or wider canopy where you've got bunches on the inside, bunches on the outside, and you get this kind of nice mix of flavors. And through that, you get an expression of something in the juice that is unique, and hopefully that comes out in the wine. That's obviously all in the process that you need to manage. There are some challenges with old vines, that you've got a lot of missing vineyards or vines in the vineyard. You've got, maybe more disease pressure because of buildup of mildew over the years and etc. There's stuff that goes on, but if you're careful and you look after them well, they can produce something really fascinating. But I always say, there's certain old people that you meet who really inspire you in life. I've met a few. One was Hope Marguerite. I've met your mum, who I think is an inspirational character. She's not that old, but so you find vineyards that do the same.
Yeah.
But not all vineyards, just because they're old, will make an amazing wine.
No.
That's just unfortunately
still the site and
it's still all that stuff that's going to go into it. So I think it's a great initiative, and I think as long as we don't cheat ourselves out of the authenticity of it and the trueness of what you can produce, and if you say, oh, this wine's actually not up to standard, therefore pull the old vine stamp off it for this year, then that's what you should be doing. You should be doing this for the long-term success of this concept.
And even one day when you have to replant the vineyard, if it's planted to the same varietal and you're honoring the legacy of that vineyard, then it's the whole project has made sense because it's still a Chenin block that's going to produce beautiful wine.
Yeah, it should. If you trust it, it will. Maybe not the same in the beginning, because it won't. But with time, it will produce something really, But I think then it also is like, how do you apply the winemaking technique to it that allows it to show? Throwing it into brand new wood would not do anything to it, or fermenting it with just super commercial yeast would probably not do
Yeah.
anything either. So then how do you manage that whole authentic expression?
And how's that journey evolved for you? Because I feel like
Yeah.
your wines have also changed over the years. It's not like a dramatic stylistic change. It's just they've become maybe for me like more fresh and elegant and but I think that's the whole industry has also undergone. I mean, I remember one of the Chenin Blancs that we used to like sell and drink and think was the best ever. It was the Ridiero Robusta. Remember that? It like
Absolutely, yeah.
absolute beast of a wine.
Yeah.
I mean, it was delicious and beautifully made,
Yeah.
but it had like, I think it had like a botrytis, and it was just rich and
15 alcohol kind of.
yeah, like it was like having like apricots and cream, for dessert. How has that evolved for you in your winemaking journey?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting question for me personally, but also for an industry, So if we go to the industry view on it, if we look at like how South African wines have evolved over the last 30 years, you say like 90s, getting exposed to the world of wine out there, getting to travel again as winemakers a lot more. So therefore, experience of different regions. What was happening in the rest of the world was that, there was this modernization of single cultivar wines, this drive for ripeness and fruit and expression and
like opulence,
and, and it was driven by Aussie and Bordeaux and California kind of concepts. And I think that was like, oh, wow, we looked at it, we want to make that stuff. And we unfortunately said, okay, and maybe it was helped by the journalists not really rating us very highly at that time and saying our wines were too rustic and whatever. And then so you then end up copying styles that are not appropriate to your country or don't reflect your country's winemaking culture and philosophy. So then, but it's all about confidence, and I think we lack confidence. We lacked clarity in actually what we wanted to produce.
Yeah.
But then if you look back into the 70s or 80s or 60s, you look at some of the wines produced then and you taste them, and some of them are magnificent now. You like, if you get a good bottle, it's incredible. But that's time. That's a whole different side to it. Then I think from the mid-2000s, late 2000s, there was a kind of a start to a shift in terms of stylistic searches of what we wanted to make and what could be made to capture more South African concepts. And I think that really only started kicking in the early 2011, 12, 13, that kind of time. And an interest by journalists in what was happening in the Swartland, I think, as a primal lead for that kind of initiative into what can South Africa produce that isn't a copy of somewhere else. And I think that was the start of a kind of a whole shift in terms of the South African wine identity and style. And I think it now moves to this very desire to have very elegant, very lean, very stylistically lighter styles of wine, which I always say it's a pendulum, and the pendulum will swing
completely
this way and that way, and somewhere in the middle you find your style that is there because it doesn't pay attention to the trends. That you can't chase the trends.
It's timeless.
It should be if you're true to it, and if you're capturing something from your area and your vineyards, and then it will shift with time. For me, it was a similar journey. I learned winemaking at Elsenburg, where it was all cultured yeasts, rota fermenters, Richard Smart viticulture, which is New Zealand viticulture. Like, what the hell? We're not in New Zealand. We're not like, we're not farming Sauvignon Blanc. So, so all that was what we were being fed and told to read and told to study and told to understand. And no way should you use natural ferments, or it's the work of the devil kind of thing. So if I look at it from that point of view, then I say, yeah, that was a challenging time to find that path and to decide, okay, this is actually what we're going to do, and then it kind of comes back to trying to capture the authenticity of your place. And so it's been a full circle in a way of style. We've shifted. We started with very light pinotages and really relatively light Shennons in the beginning, with quite a lot of that wet wool reductive characters, to very oak-driven, riper, richer reds, with more opulence and trying to chase that fruit expression, but also with young vineyards, so it was kind of combined with young vines. And then finding that doesn't, I always say I have 3 kids, and if I have to drink 15 alcohol wines every day, I'm not going to be a good parent, so I needed to tune it down and make wines that, I like to drink. I like to drink a glass of wine. I don't want to struggle. And I take those Roderas, which I have a lot of respect for Teddy and what he was making at the time. They were amazing. But I still remember sitting with Hope and tasting it at a retirement village in Namanas. And we both like, we can't drink this. This is too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. So we had already, like, from 2009 already shifted style in terms of Shannon and holding back on wood and holding back on specifically new wood, but also going down the kind of full natural ferments and just trying to capture the essence of the wines in that time.
Oh, you've achieved it. So it's really, you're making absolutely beautiful
But it doesn't happen quickly.
No, and I think the key word for me there is confidence. I also have walked a similar journey in terms of like father in wine. And I just remember my dad, like mid 2000s selling Elgin cab, which was really tough, right? I mean, it was like these massive Stellenbosch cabs and lots of new oak. And now if you look at what Restless River's done.
I was going to say, your dad needed a few tattoos.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that staying true to your site and then having the confidence and the conviction just to express that, and whoever is attracted to that, brilliant. If not, that's also fine. That's what wine's about.
I think having that confidence to say that you can't satisfy everybody's taste. And you can find your market, you can find your customer.
Yeah.
As long as you're not sitting with 5 million bottles.
Yes.
It's all okay, you can sell it, but it does mean that you can't just be a viticulturalist and you can't just be a winemaker. You actually have to get out into the market and understand your customer, but also tell them the story.
Get on the plane to the UK.
Get on the plane to the UK and sing for your supper.
Economy or premium economy?
Oh, just the regular cattle class. I'm still dreaming of that upgrade one day. I think when I was in my hippie phase, I got upgraded once.
Yeah.
Like I had like dreads and I stank and I had like necklaces and weird shirts and I came back from traveling around Europe and I got upgraded. I was like, what? How do you upgrade a skank like me? Like,
it's so funny. It happened to me once, and I tried to turn left, and the air hostess actually made me turn right. She didn't believe what was printed on the card. So Shannon, absolutely fantastic. It's such a beautiful wine, and I think maybe that one of the points to make as well, which you've achieved with your Shannon, is you've also created this journey for your clientele to drink your Shannon, but then also make their way into Hope Marguerite. And they're just stylistically different. But there's that golden thread which you've created.
I still say the unwooded Shannon is our most important wine.
It's incredible wine.
It's on so many levels. It obviously keeps the business running. It's 75% of our total production, but it's also like it's the introducer to the rest of the wines. And if you love that, then hopefully you love the rest.
It really is. Okay, so one thing we don't talk too much about, for some reason, is pinotage here, and it's not
pinotage.
Pinotage. And it's for no other reason, I think, than it's just not a subject that I kind of haven't dived into pinotage as much, and maybe it's also because it's a varietal that isn't like Cabernet, or where it's got a specific calling card. It does really show differently in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Are you happy to?
So down this.
Yeah, why not,
Okay.
Sam? I can get someone to grab it for you, but
I've only got to get on the airplane.
exactly. So I'm really interested to, because this wine is becoming more and more popular, for us across the continent. And I just love to dig
I've
into
got
it.
quite a lot to get through.
Okay, cool. We'll go.
I need to sell.
Okay, we're on it.
Any? No, so I actually heard from JP yesterday, my brother-in-law, who said that Eben had said something to him the other day. Eben apparently, he grows Pinotage and makes a little bit for adding into one of his wines. And he said, Pinotage, other grapes just make themselves. But Pinotage, you actually have to think about how to make it.
Yeah.
And I think it's very true of Pinot Noir. I think, if you want to understand some of its parentage, then understanding Pinot Noir and the real delicacy and precision that you need to have to be a great Pinot producer, never mind the site and where you're planting it. I don't think the same applies with Pinotage because it's a little bit more forgiving, but you really, if I look at all my wines that I make and the ones that I really apply myself the hardest to, it's definitely the Pinotage.
Really?
Yeah.
And why? Why is that? Is it just tougher in the cellar? Well,
tougher in the vineyard.
Even on the vineyard from when to harvest.
Yeah. I think, we've been fortunate in the way that we've worked with very old vineyards, which had a lot of virus, and, I've just pulled out the really old block now. And then also having kind of a mix of younger vines in the mix. And what I've realized is that there's almost a month's difference between the ripening or picking date on the young vine to the old vine.
Oh, wow.
So just because the function of the vineyard is, the viruses stop the leaves functioning, the sugars don't pick up. And and then the critical thing is how do you manage the tannin on Pinotage? Because that's always the kind of standout signature that tells you this is Pinotage, is that kind of dry aftertaste that you get. So how do you manage that in the winemaking? Or firstly, when to pick it, and then, are those tannins ripe? And can you then, should you punch it down once a day? Should you ferment it hot? Should you ferment it cool? Do you want to get red fruit or dark fruit? Do you want to have 15 alcohol? Do you want to have 12 alcohol? Which, and there are all these variables which apply to other cultivars, but somehow they're easier with Syrah, and the Cab Franc is pretty intense. I work a lot with that, but Grenache is easier. Mourvèdre is late, so you just pick it when it's, when you get there.
When it's almost dead,
But Pinotage, again, the young vineyards are very different to the old vines. And then you've got yield, which is a massive issue, I think, in Pinotage, where it works super well for commercial big volume producers because it will crop itself, it will give you 25 tons without blinking,
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's massive. And these very dense, very heavy bunches with bigger berries than Pinot Noir and but the similar shape of bunch. And it's just, super fertile. And then, so how do you manage the crop and get it into the cellar, and then what do you apply in the cellar? And we really do apply a lot of natural but strict.
And every year is different. You have to.
Yeah, and I've got this guy who's making a little bit of wine with me, Dinesh, and he's been experimenting with whole bunch ferments, 100% whole bunch. I was like, oh, Pinotage has got enough tannin. You don't need to ferment whole bunch and then add stalk tannin to it. Why? And actually, his wine turned out pretty nice.
Wow.
So I'm now looking at a percentage of whole bunch and bringing that in, which is a new addition to our Pinotage, and using that on the younger vineyards, where you don't have the same tannin depth in the skins. Use a bit of stalk to polymerize and change the structure and bring a bit more red fruit into it. So
that's the big thing that I noticed with your Pinotage. It's got such lovely red fruit.
Yeah.
And it is funny that I think it's such a valuable thing to have other winemakers making wine from your vineyards, because you can learn so much. in this little cellar, it was all small batch, punch down, cold soak, kind of like, I suppose, a fairly kind of modern, but at the same time rustic approach. And then Sam from Lismore takes the Syrah and just dumps it all into big stainless steel and does 100% whole bunch with Syrah.
Yeah.
And it's like her CWG.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't even have thought that's like so risky or possible.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to see what the different approaches can yield.
And they do, right? I mean, going a whole bunch into is risky on its own, because you can get that acetonal kind of development, and especially with pinotage, it's very prone to very pre-ferment.
That was like the early
acetone.
criticism of pinotage, I think, in the 70s.
And that locks in with that banana kind of spectrum.
Yeah.
And all these other weird characters, which, I like to look at it and I say, well, part of it is winemaking, part of it is dirty cellar in those old wines, not being hygienic enough. And then overcropping, just being desperate to get wine onto the market and forcing your vineyards to overyield. And you never get a good wine out of that. You always get something weedy and
just out of balance.
Yeah, it's just out of balance. So, and you force something like that, it doesn't work. So I think pinotage deserves more respect from winemakers as a grape. And I think what you're seeing now is that you've got a handful of really passionate pinotage producers in different areas. I had the Phoenix from Signs of Sinai the other day up in Joburg, and I really love that wine. I followed it, and Wolf and Women, and a few other producers who are making this kind of medium-bodied or lighter-bodied or kind of in-between kind of style to the very classic Kanonkop or Beierskloof or Lavenier, which are much denser, more inky, which have their place and are incredible wines as well. But you've got to, I've always said, we're slightly cooler. We want to express that more red fruit style. And I like drinking a 13 alcohol pinotage, not a 15 alcohol. So that's for me.
You can serve it slightly chilled. Yeah. That's what we love about this wine on the continent. And you can have it at lunchtime, slightly chilled. Yeah. Very versatile. It's got lots of beautiful length as well.
Yeah. Those tannins give it that natural length. And that's why I like using it in a blend with Vitruvian or something like that, because pinotage, without having oak, gives natural tannin. And, to a blend, you want that kind of grape tannin. Yeah, and it's the one wine that we sell, well, besides the Shannons, that we sell in every market around the world, and I've always, we've had great followers of it, especially, like in the restaurant scene. I know that the Potluck Club, for example, always had it on their list. And I bumped into Freddie the other day. He's up in Joburg. He's got a restaurant up there. And he said, oh, man, that Bangwan Pinotage, I'll never forget it from 2009 or whenever he was 19. Maybe he's not that old. But he was working there and he remembers the wine for that, and it's that kind of, I like the style that we produce. And this is 23 vintage, which is like very kind of a cooler. It missed the rain at the end of the vintage, but so we managed to, because pinotage is relatively early. It's actually quite a good grape for drought avoidance and these kind of climate shifts. Yeah. And I think it's something that we need to pay attention to going forward.
Big time. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, we often talk about what's in the glass, but what you just mentioned about people coming to you and talking about the wine, they've associated it with a dish, with an experience, with friends. Yeah. And I drank this wine recently at like a Burma dinner in Botswana. It was just absolutely beautiful. And then I'd forgotten until now, but we were with friends and there were about 7 kids under 5. We were having brunch at your beautiful farm, and we were like, you know what? The only thing that's going to get us through today is a glass of Hope Marguerite's Shannon. So you can really, you can connect wine, obviously, to flavor and tannin and all these things, but where you experience it, who you experience it with.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what you've also created on the farm, like with Nikki and Jen and the whole team. You've created a place that you can go and enjoy a fantastic meal. You can go and stay. And then you mentioned climate change. Your family's kept quite meticulous records of rainfall and that's also a fascinating subject for me, just in terms of where things are going. And I know some of the amazing properties in Burgundy, they've, on the walls or on the eaves, they've got like recorded the first harvest date and how much that's changed. I mean, this year, I don't know what the Europeans are going to be doing with it's absolute disaster. But how have things changed for you farming down in Bot River and some of the recent calamities you guys have faced with weather?
Yeah, I think I've always had kind of quite a farmer view on it.
Yes.
That, like, I always look at people from the city and they're like, oh my word, it's so much colder this year or so much hotter this year. And I said, well, if it's colder, you just got a year older and you're feeling the cold more, therefore it's not really. But, it's so easy to get caught up in the drama of weather, and it's probably the one thing that everybody talks about every day. So they're going to talk about the weather. So you got no control over it, and you've got and you kind of, I think, having grown up in one place and lived there and understood it, I've seen it more gradual evolution in terms of. So we've seen the extremes in each decade. We've seen a flood. We've seen the big floods, small floods. Hailstorms, we've seen things that happen in nature that, you just have no control over, droughts and dry years. But what's changed, I think, is this kind of frequency that seems to have shifted, an intensity that's definitely very visible at the moment in this last 6 years of 2020 onwards. And like, how does one start to kind of deal with it and understand, how much of an impact is this going to have on our business long term or short term even. It is something that we really have to stay focused on and look at how we're going to farm, how we're going to plant short term, long term, to mitigate against it and to keep a business viable. People ask me, like, well, my kids they're gonna take over the business. I said, yeah, sure, they might, but whether they'll still be farming wine, they might be farming lavender or rosemary, or I don't know, they might, or just doing accommodation because nothing else is viable in that way. And vineyards need cold, they need dormancy, they need to go to sleep, they need that rest to produce quality wine, they need a certain length of time to ripen. So there's a definite effect on quality if the climate changes dramatically. So I think Elgin is an interesting area in that it, and all the kind of weather data graphs and everything, it's more stable in the long term. Whereas Bot River, just 15 k's down.
Well, we send you all our water.
You send us everything that comes flooding down.
Kluwer basically collects all the water and sends
I wish
it
I
down.
had got their forklift that washed away, but I'd never found that.
You'll find it one day.
One day it'll end up in the. So I'm still a farmer, and I'm still very conscious and kind of, I don't know, there's some fancy English words, pragmatic, or I don't know whether that's a word, but
you have to be stoic about it.
Yeah, you do. Nick's has post PTSD from the 23 floods, because it was just so intense and that kind of sense of it, and then we had this rain this year. And, you can hear it hit the roof and you kind of go into this shock. Yeah. What the hell, is it all going to happen again? And so that is a trauma that sits in you.
Well, you lost 5 hectares of...
Yeah, of fruit, apples and pears, which is, it is radical. It was a massive damage, and we haven't even seen it because of the long-term effect of it. It would have been a revenue kind of thing. It's a cost side that was lost, but it's also a revenue that we would have been getting by now and into the future. That's gone.
And
completely
and the
gone.
Topsoil's gone.
Topsoil's gone. So the soil, the structure, we actually had the Department of Agriculture there today looking at it and assessing all the rivers. And we've got Stellenbosch research project working on it, and different people, realizing from an academic and a scientific point of view that this is stuff that we need to now start planning for more seriously. So I think, it's a massive factor. And I've been in Europe recently, and it was 40 degrees in Hamburg and humid, and it's super uncomfortable. Like if you don't,
That's
if you're
not
not,
fun,
if you're not, and that's been happening in Japan yesterday. I think it was like 5 days of 40 degrees. It's also not, so there's a,
It's like being in Maputo,
you can,
but like December.
exactly, like we're normal.
Yeah.
But I think for South Africa, it's the dramatic shift is not maybe as intense or visible as in Burgundy or in Bordeaux or some of the other wine regions in the world, but it is something that's starting to show that it's and then Andrea Molyneux says you got drought avoidance and drought tolerance. So what are you farming? Are you early cultivars are drought avoidant, which I think is right, and then you've got cultivars that are drought tolerant that are coming from very low rainfall areas in Spain or in Greece, or and that can keep natural acidity higher, and so we need to look at cultivars for like that for planting for the future.
And you also look at vineyards in general, just how much less water they take compared to an apple tree.
Apple tree for sure, yeah. And that's the beauty of vineyards, as they can be. And I've done simple things like change row direction and to bring more coolness, take the direct heat of the sun out of the vineyard just by changing the way that we plant the vineyard. So that helps. Just a simple, practical thing. I mean, obviously you can't do that every 50 years, but it's not a quick process. But every new vineyard we plant in a different way, and we're looking at different ways of trellising, and so there's ways. You can also say, oh, it's all disastrous, and go and knit muesli in the side of Nordic, and that's not going to help. But or you can just say, I need to figure out ways of
well, it says a lot about your family that you took that disaster and saw this massive amount of sand that had been washed onto your property, and you decided to have a beach party at Cape Wine.
For sure.
That's incredible.
It's all been washed away again. So the beach is no longer. But I think it is like that. You can, and I think that's where Nikki is incredible in keeping me, like, I do sometimes see the cup half empty, but she sees it always cup half full and overflowing. But it's like, and as a couple working in the business and trying to make a business work, it's super intense, but it's also, we're both very passionate about what we do, and I think that's part of trying to create this experience where you come to the farm and experience the food, and wine is just one part of life. Totally. Wine isn't everything. It's totally. Like it's one element of your daily life, or your special moment, or your journey to understand places. And I love the way that wine takes you to different places. And I had a customer walk in one day and he said, I've got a bone to pick with you, which, if you say that to me, it like gets the hair on my neck standing up, because my mother said that to me when I was about 14, because I'd left my pellet gun pellets lying around for my younger brother to eat. So she's like, fair enough to pick with you. I was like, okay, this is not good. Anyway, he said, like, he said, I traveled all the way from Kleinmond all the way to Botswana to open my fridge in my very expensive lodge to see a bottle of Beaumont standing in front of me. He says, I'm trying to avoid you, So wine is like that. It's like, exactly your problem. But it is that, and it's amazing that it, I love that about wine. Not just what's in, not just the quality of it, but, the story that's attached to each bottle, if you're interested in it, and the journey that it can take you on. If you really want to follow it, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and you can approach it from any angle. Yeah. Whether it's food or art or history or science, it's, or
just like a regular thing
like
that you need
delicious
to have
thing to have
with
to
your
keep
meal,
exactly.
To keep the wheels of life turning.
Exactly.
Because I think sometimes people are, especially the younger generation, are kind of quite intimidated still by wine, and we must demystify that and take that, that kind of like pretense away, and just make it like, if you don't like a bottle, don't drink it. But I know it's expensive when you're a student and you go like, drink anything.
No, don't worry. They've figured out which tasting rooms to go to.
Yeah.
Sebastian, thank you. It's so lekker seeing you. And it's really, here's to many more shared glasses.
Absolutely.
And almond milk cortados at your beautiful farm.
Thanks, man.
And good luck on your travels, and just keep doing what you're doing. I think the industry needs that like passion and just refreshing, kind of straightforward approach. And
cool.
Keep it up. You're doing an amazing job.
We'll try. Cheers, Al.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.